Week 2 of NFL action is upon us. Welcome to the Pro Football Network YouTube channel. I'm Derek Tate alongside the one and only Kyle Soppe, taking your start-sit questions for Week 2 of fantasy football. Soppe, before we get into everything, got a lot of news, notes, injury updates, obviously inactives or players that are going to go that have been on the injury report all week. How'd you do in week number 1? That's always a good way. We've got to get off on the right foot here. So I'm just asking how some of your fantasy teams are doing.
I'm doing good. It's funny. The league I'm most concerned about, I lost and pretty much swept the board otherwise. So I don't know if that's good or bad, but I'll take it. We've got some good takes. I like how week 2 started. We've got a nice little James Cook versus Josh Jacobs situation brewing, and I didn't hate Thursday Night Football, so there's that. But I'm excited. It's funny when you get into like week 8, 9. You're coming on Thanksgiving and stuff like that. It's like, like let's do this. Let's chug along. Let's get to 1 o'clock. I'm still a spring chicken. I am still happy. I am thrilled to have football on our TVs. I am looking forward to today.
Joining us here early, Joseph Morrow, Tater Tots, and Soppe Joes for breakfast. Yeah, mine sounds a little cooler. I don't know about the Soppe Joes. That's actually something when you have a bad take, I may call it a little bit sloppy soppy or something like that. It just doesn't even sound right. Anyway, so we're going to be, but yeah, feel free to hit us with your start-sit questions entering week 2 of NFL action. We're going to get to those here in just a second. But Soppe, some breaking news, or maybe some news and notes certainly that are fantasy relevant. Christian McCaffrey sent to IR over the last 48 hours. Obviously, this elevates Jordan Mason, who had an outstanding 2024 season debut against the New York Jets. Looks like he's automatically out for the next 4 weeks. Reports even suggest it could be 6 weeks or longer with Achilles tendonitis. So what are you to make of this San Francisco offense? Does it hurt some of the pass catchers, losing, arguably the best running back in the NFL? And what does it do for Jordan Mason in your rest of season rankings and potentially him campaigning to have a role not only as a leading back while McCaffrey's on the shelf, but maybe even if McCaffrey isn't 100%, what could his fantasy relevance be? Maybe some standalone value as we progress into the back half of the 2024 season.
Yeah, no, I think that's interesting. The 49ers have their bye in week 9. So it's a fine mix here. We think he's going to miss 6-7 weeks. It kind of seems like they're pointing to, maybe we'll run him out the week before the bye and see how he recovers during the bye, or we'll take advantage of the bye week off and then bring him back in November. We'll see where this goes. I'm not 100% sold on Jordan Mason holding standalone value when McCaffrey's healthy, but that's obviously a month and a half, 2 months away from being the case. Until then, he's a top 15 guy. He's a part of this offense. It's pretty clear that Kyle Shanahan has him penciled in for, I don't want to say the Christian McCaffrey role, but maybe 85% of it, and that's pretty damn impressive considering McCaffrey by himself was a tier alone last season. So we're not going to get what we got last week every week. Obviously, you don't get that from anybody other than McCaffrey himself. So that's out of the question, but he's going to be a weekly starter. You can feel good about however much fab you spent on him. You probably didn't spend enough. So right now you're talking about a running back 1, if not a high-end running back 2 for the foreseeable future. As far as the pass catchers in San Fran go, the offensive equity drops a little bit, but the usage of everybody increases. This makes George Kittle more reputable on a week-to-week basis. He's still going to be volatile. Like that's the nature of the position, but you're looking at a tight end position. It was deep this preseason, and then nobody did anything in week 1 other than Isaiah Likely, who nobody started. None of these tight ends have a projected yardage total over 60 yards today. So, it gets ugly in a hurry. You can swallow some of that risk. Kittle's fine. This, to me, helps Deebo Samuel in a considerable way. 8 carries last week. He didn't have more than 5 in a game for like 11 months prior to that. So you're looking at a true weapon that can be utilized. That my take on Deebo on being out on him all preseason was that you can't really count on that. But without CMC there, you certainly can. And if he's getting 5 carries and 7 targets, that adds up to a wide receiver 1 in the same conversation as Brandon Ayuk. No change for Purdy or Ayuk for me. You're starting all your 49ers still.
Yeah, it's still the 49ers offense, and it didn't really seem to miss a beat against a tough Jet secondary. And I know there was no touchdowns through the air for Brock Purdy, although Brandon Ayuk dropped one, but still pretty encouraged about the San Francisco offense. They didn't seem to it's weird to say that they didn't miss Christian McCaffrey in week 1. That's a weird thing to say, but it was a nice performance from Jordan Mason. He's certainly in my top 15 conversation on a weekly basis. In particular, I have him at running back 9 this week against the Minnesota Vikings. Let's touch on some other running backs, though, worth keeping an eye on. It was a great debut from Kenneth Walker. there against the Denver Broncos. 20 carries, 103 rushing yards, and a score. Also added another 6 yards on 2 receptions and 3 targets in the passing game. But it looks like he is doubtful to play week number 2 against the New England Patriots while he's dealing with an oblique injuries. So obviously adjust your lineups accordingly. But what are your thoughts on Zach Charbonnet? Because this looked like Walker's backfield, Soppe. He saw 2/3 of the snaps, and then obviously the 20 carries on the ground trumped what we saw from Zach Charbonnet. But with Walker out, I know that they're going to promote George Holani, I believe a rookie from Boise State. Kenny McIntosh is somebody that has occasionally contributed, but it feels like Charbonnet's backfield entering week 2 against New England.
Yeah, I mean, McIntosh is a type of an apple, not really a running back you're fearing in a major way when taking away from Charbonnet. I've got Charbonnet at running back 20 this week, and I agree with you. This is Kenneth Walker's backfield with kind of a bullet, which is where we were trending coming into the season, but obviously with him on the shelf. And this is part of the Kenneth Walker experience. We know that he misses time on occasion, so this, as much as it sucks this early in the season, it's part of the math. So you're factoring this in to some degree. You probably didn't spend to get Walker and Charbonnet. If you have Charbonnet, you're playing him. If not, I wouldn't sweat it. I wouldn't move Kenneth Walker. I wouldn't make any drastic situations here. It doesn't sound like he's going on IR or anything specific like that. So I'm hoping that Walker is back and explosive like he's ever been sooner rather than later. He'll be a top 15 guy for me moving forward. When Charbonnet fills in for him, it's a little regressed from that, but still in the running back 2 conversation for sure.
One player to keep an eye on too, Soppe, the wide receiver 1 after week number 1 was Jayden Reed, and he popped up on the injury report, is expected to play while dealing with a shin and calf injury. Obviously, his debut was outstanding against Philadelphia. 4 receptions for 138 yards and a score. And, of course, he can also contribute on the ground. But the shift of this offense looks completely different as we expect. Jordan Love is not going to be under center for Green Bay in their matchup against Indianapolis at Lambeau Field. So what are you doing with Jayden Reed, dealing with an injury, also with what is expected, maybe some struggles through the air with a backup quarterback who has not had a lot of success torching opposing secondaries through his, limited NFL career.
That is awfully kind of you.
I'm being very generous.
Yeah, no, you're a good man, Derek Tate. You're better than I am. You must not be a Packer fan that's pulling for this team. But as far as Jayden Reed, the injury scares me a little bit. The case of the Malik Willis scares me a little bit more. I'm going to wait and see. I'm sitting him for right now. He's outside my top 35 at the position. I think this is a slow-paced game with the Colts. You're looking at a team that wants to run the ball. The Packers want to run the ball. The clock might be running. This might be the first game in that 1 o'clock window that finishes. That's a problem. They're going to be playing from behind, you would think, in this game and moving forward until Love gets back. In theory, that helps. You want to get the ball in the hands of your playmakers, even more so when you're trailing, than just grind it out with Josh Jacobs. But I need to see it before I believe it here. Week 2 of the NFL season, nobody's on bye. Generally decent health across the board at the wide receiver position. I'm going to go out on a limb and say most teams with Jayden Reed have a guy on the roster that I prefer over him this week.
2 more situations I want to touch on real quick because, Jamison Williams, by the way, it looks like he is going to be active dealing with an ankle injury, and you want to start him this week. I have him as a top 35, if not top 30 guy going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers secondary that had Zion McCollum, starting cornerback, pick up a concussion. It looks like he could potentially be on the football field for this matchup, which would help, but they're still probably without Antoine Winfield Jr., an all-pro safety to kind of anchor the back end of that Todd Bowles defense. This is a secondary that's really banged up, so definitely keep an eye on Jamison Williams in this Week 2 matchup against the Bucs. But Soppe, a late appearance on the injury report heading into a Monday night matchup was A.J. Brown, who had a fantastic, speak of that Packers-Eagles contest in week number 1, 5 receptions, 119 yards, and a score against the Green Bay secondary, including a long touchdown reception. He's dealing with a hamstring injury, and he plays on Monday night against the Atlanta Falcons. How are you approaching A.J. Brown's outlook entering week 2?
Yeah, this can be a case-by-case basis depending who's on your roster. If you have a Monday night replacement, all that good stuff. For the most part, I tanked him in my rankings. Like, you just have to. I had questions coming in on Twitter. Hit me up, Kyle Soppe, PFN, Derek Tate, NFL, on the old Twitter machine there. We'll get to those questions that we can't on the stream during the week, but I had questions coming in like Xavier Worthy or A.J. Brown and things like that where I have to make a decision ahead of time. Xavier Worthy, you get to wait a little bit here because he plays in the later window, but I'm going Worthy in a spot like that. I'm going to take the upside where I can get it, barring you having a matchup that you think you're just absolutely dead in and you want to wait on the upside of A.J. Brown and maybe you add Jahan Dotson or Darnell Mooney as a handcuff there. But these late injury ads are worrisome, even more so when they come on Monday night. You don't have options to replace them. So if you're going with a guy in that flex range, if it's Xavier Worthy or A.J. Brown, I'm going to sit Brown. I'm going to avoid risk because that's kind of the situation you've put yourself in. I'll go Chris Godwin over a guy like Brown. I'll go Amari Cooper over a guy like Brown. I'm just looking down the ranks here. Brian Thomas, I'll go over A.J. Brown, which is it's no fun to say, especially if he plays and you did it wrong. But, it is what it is.
So a couple other situations I want to touch on real quick before we get to your start sit questions. By the way, if you're not done, so just go ahead and subscribe, like, so you get every a little bit of a notification, click the bell so you see every time we drop a new bit of video content here on the Pro Football Network YouTube channel. We'll get to your start sit questions here in just a second, but we do want to bring up on the primetime game for Sunday night, Houston Texans, Chicago Bears, rough debut for Caleb Williams, and I would say that they're getting a jump in competition going up against a playoff team from last year with the Houston Texans, and Keenan Allen dealing with a heel injury, and Rome Odunze, the talented rookie, dealing with a knee injury. It looks like they're both questionable for that primetime game, Soppe. So how are you approaching the options there in Chicago? And I mean, really, they're the ancillary options, I believe, to DJ Moore, and we didn't see a whole lot of encouraging signs from Caleb Williams in his debut. You could argue that Keenan Allen should have had 3 touchdowns in that game, but they were unable to connect, and this is a tougher matchup for the first road start of Caleb Williams' career. So how are you handling these Bears options on the primetime slate, which obviously fantasy managers may have to make a decision on?
Yeah, I'm going to wait as long as I can. It's a little bit more optimistic than the A.J. Brown situation. Keenan Allen seems to kind of be maybe a coin flip or on the 60-40 side of playing. Rome Odunze, everything's coming out is kind of more optimistic than it has been all week, but I'm not going down the Odunze rabbit hole quite yet. I mean, that right now that's a 2-leg parlay, right? We don't know that he's capable of producing at the NFL level, and at this point we don't know that Caleb Williams is. So if you need 2 things to go in the right direction there to move him. So he's outside my top 35, outside my top 40. I'm not going that direction. Keenan Allen, on the other hand, is a little bit different. We saw him earn targets in the opener. I do think Caleb Williams is better in start 2 than start 1, and this game could get up and down. We know that Chicago's defense has been better of late, but we also know that C.J. Stroud and company can put points on the board. So I have Keenan Allen tucked inside my top 30. If you don't have another option and you're risk averse and all that good stuff, it's a situational play. I have him just behind Jameson Williams. So if we're judging injury-based receivers, I'm going Jameson over Keenan Allen. I have Drake London 1 spot ahead of Keenan Allen. I've got guys like Terry McLaurin and Christian Kirk just behind him. I've got Keenan Allen ahead of A.J. Brown if that's a decision you have to make.
Other ones to touch on real quick. Devon Vele from the Denver Broncos. If you're planning on starting him, you're probably in trouble. But he did get 8 targets, Soppe, and caught 8 passes in week number 1. So maybe Josh Reynolds or Cortland Sutton gets a slight bump in volume in week number 2. Jordan Addison also ruled out against the San Francisco 49ers. If you're starting Justin Jefferson, of course you're starting Justin Jefferson, even in a tough matchup. But maybe worth keeping an eye on. Jalen Naylor scored himself a touchdown in his debut against the New York Football Giants in week number 1. And one other quick note, Hollywood Brown out for the year. That was a bit of a surprise. We knew he may miss some time, but I don't think anybody saw him potentially, missing the entire season. This makes me just feel even more bullish on Xavier Worthy. I think his fantasy value now enters the wide receiver 2 range. Soppe, what are your thoughts on Xavier Worthy, this Kansas City offense now without Hollywood Brown for the rest of the 2024 season?
Yeah, I agree. When Xavier Worthy was drafted, part of the math was, Hollywood's there, Rice is there, maybe suspend, whatever. But that Worthy might peak later in the season because that's what rookie receivers do. But now he's being funneled into a ton of opportunity in one of the league's best offenses. Even if he struggles now, that just makes me more encouraged that come November, December, he's going to be ready for prime time. I'm with you. I'm starting him just about every week if I can. And to me, this elevates my confidence in Travis Kelce a little bit here. The target, he's going to be needed. I wasn't sure that he was going to be needed in a significant way during the regular season because you had 3 other options. You got Rashee Rice kind of supplanting him as the preferred underneath option. Travis Kelce was going to have his moments, don't get me wrong, but I was a little iffy on how consistent those would be. This ups my confidence in his consistency factor for the fantasy season, but I'm still not sure he's going to be a tier 1 guy.
Well, speaking of prime time, it's time to jump into the meat and potatoes of this entire live stream, which is taking your start sit questions. So go ahead and hit us with them in the comments. We'll start it off with Joseph Navarro, who we handled his entire starting lineup.
I hope he had a good week 1.
Appreciate you jumping back on, Joseph. Who's a better DFS play this week since both are at the same price? Ja'Marr Chase, Soppe, or Deebo Samuel?
I think it's got to be Deebo here, right? I mean, nothing against Chase, don't get me wrong. He's an alpha talent with Joe Burrow healthy, yada, no T. Higgins. Like, you could go on and on here. But how many times over his last 17 games do you think Ja'Marr Chase hit 75 receiving yards?
I don't know, Soppe. I know you'll tell me, though.
I will. That's what I'm here for. That's the good stuff. 7 out of 17. That's not a great number here. Obviously, Joe Burrow wasn't healthy for all of that, and that plays into some of this. But we mentioned it earlier with Christian McCaffrey. He's sitting. So, I mean, we're turning potential maybe targets into carries here for Deebo. And for him, that has a higher point expectancy because his ADOT is low with Brock Purdy. His catch rate is low compared to Brandon Ayuk. He was, in my opinion, the clear number 2. He's now the number 2 receiver and the number 2 running back. You're talking about one of the premier yak guys in the league, and I think it's pretty safe to pencil him in for 8 to 10 touches. Give me that over Ja'Marr Chase, which right now kind of feels like more risk than reward.
Oh, Soppe, this one's tough because Ja'Marr Chase tends to give the Kansas City defense some issues, and they don't have L'Jarius Sneed. And I thought that Lamar played all right in week number 1. I'm going to roll with Chase. I hear everything you're saying, and I understand that. I like the matchup for Deebo Samuel in week number 2 in a hyper-aggressive defense. If you're playing a lot of man coverage or going, 0 across the board, which Brian Flores does run at one of the highest rates in the league. He blitzes 51% of the time last year. So if you're going to blitz, all it takes is Deebo shedding 1 tackle, and he could take 1 to the house.
Or 2.
Yeah, or 2 or 3, in particular now that, Christian McCaffrey is out. So it saw 5 carries last week against the Jets. I think he'll continue to be heavily involved. But I'm going to go with Ja'Marr Chase. I mean, I expect this Kansas City offense to generate some points against the Cincinnati Bengals defense, which got tuned up on the ground by Ramondre Stevenson and the New England Patriots. Soppe, what do we think that the Chiefs are going to do to this Cincinnati defense? But in particular, no T. Higgins. Again, they're going to have to lean heavily on Ja'Marr Chase in this one. So hopefully he's got, no lasting ailments from that stomach bug. So I am going to go ahead and go with Ja'Marr Chase, but it is very close in DFS. Nico Stevenson or Rachaad White? Soppe, who you got?
This one isn't too close for me. Give me Rachaad White. And listen, I've had a bended knee for this Rachaad White stuff. I think I've been wrong on White for maybe 87% of my time at PFN here. We're trying to rectify that, which means it's pretty destined for a 6-point performance here. But he is just entrenched in this offense. We think it's going to be a game that goes over 50 points. There's a lot to like there. Stevenson, we said it. I think he's the sell highest player on the board here. I mean, he was in a great matchup where game script worked out in his favor, and he capitalized. Great for him. That's not going to happen for a team that entered the season with a sub-5 win total on a consistent basis. I think Seattle beats them pretty good this week, and that puts Stevenson in a problem. Antonio Gibson's going to be more involved, in part because he can't really be less involved. So Stevenson, a sell high and a bench for Rachaad White this week for me. How about you?
Yeah, I'm going Rachaad White. I understand the potential concerns with the lack of efficiency, and we saw some encouraging things from Bucky Irving, Soppe, which maybe if those efficiency concerns on the ground for Rachaad White continue, maybe we see Bucky Irving's role expand. But on the ground, the Detroit Lions were very stout last week against Kyren Williams. I know that the offensive line was banged up, but Luke Gadecki, the starting right tackle for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Looks like he is going to be inactive against Detroit. Also was dealing with a concussion, and he was still in protocol on Friday. Last time I checked, I think he is going to be inactive. I don't think that they're going to be able to generate enough push to effectively run the football against. One thing that we saw last week, Soppe, was that Rachaad White is still a very reliable option as a pass catcher out of the backfield. So I expect more of that in a high-scoring game where I think the Buccaneers game script is going to force them to go to the air, which means you want Rachaad White in your fantasy lineup. So we're both going Rachaad White there. Good luck today, Nico. Michael Kist. Oh, hi, Michael. We got Anthony Richardson or Matthew Stafford in week number 2. Soppe, who you got?
I get the premise behind this question, but Matthew Stafford without Puka Nacua, I get that you're going to, I don't know, look at Cooper Kupp another 21 times. That could be good for fantasy stock here. And Anthony Richardson, I guess the concern here is the game script gets away or Jonathan Taylor goes bonkers, which would be great for my DFS lineup. So I hope that happens. But Anthony Richardson's the play for me here in a game we expect them to win. So there's going to be points on the board. That naturally comes with upping the projection for Richardson. You're also talking about a Packers defense that's 5th worst when it comes to defending the deep ball since the beginning of last season. And what does Anthony Richardson do? You don't need my help in answering that trivia question. He pounds the ball, which nobody can stop running, and then deep downfield, 16.4 ADOT last week. That is bananas. I don't know if that repeats and if Taylor's controlling this game. I guess there's a floor here for Richardson that doesn't come in most weeks, but there's also a ceiling that Stafford simply doesn't have access to. Give me Richardson inside my top 10, Stafford just outside it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going with Richardson's upside. And we saw the Green Bay Packers struggle a little bit to slow down the Philadelphia running. I mean, a little bit. I mean, but it was more so to the running back position. I thought they did a pretty decent job on Jalen Hurts. But I think that Anthony Richardson is a more explosive runner than Jalen Hurts. And I don't know if the Packers are going to have an answer to get them out of this game script. I think they're going to be able to run the ball effectively. And you just need 1 or 2 more deep shots that we saw Richardson is willing to take. Personally, I'd like to see him actually be able to, matriculate the ball down the field a little bit more on script. But, you're going to have that vertical element. You have his rushing upside. There's just too much to like in week number 2 to go with Stafford over Richardson's upside. Good luck today. Joseph, who has more upside this week in half-point PPR, my running back 2 spot? Brian Robinson Jr. or Jerome Ford? Soppe, who you got?
My answer all preseason was B-Rob. It's going to be my answer here, and it's going to be until the brakes fall off here. I think he's the better play here. Jerome Ford kind of garbaged his way to production last week. I'm sorry. He's not efficient. I don't want to say he's knockoff Rachaad White, but he might be. He might be. I mean, when it comes to carries that didn't gain yards, he was as high as anybody in the league last season. Nothing I saw in week 1 rectified that in my eyes, and I don't see this Cleveland offense moving in a very positive direction. Maybe I'm dead wrong, but I'm willing to be a week late to the party rather than a week early when it comes to betting on them. And then Brian Robinson I thought was great, and they were never going to get a spot where they could be more competitive. They get the Giants today. To me, Brian Robinson is the featured guy. Austin Eckler, the ancillary piece. I think the touch count's going to be pretty similar. Ford might have 1 or 2 or 3 more touches, but Robinson can be the more effective guy. Give me Robinson.
Well, I'm going with Robinson too, and I'll be brief because I thought the Jacksonville defense did a really nice job bottling up that Miami running game, who looked pretty decent against the Buffalo Bills on Thursday Night Football. Of all the things that weren't working, Devon Achane was working, and they held Devon Achane to less than 3 yards per carry, which is very, very tough to do. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and roll with Brian Robinson Jr. just because I think Daniel Jones could also turn the ball over on his own side of the football field, which could produce a couple easy scoring opportunities for the Washington offense. Nothing like betting against Daniel Jones. Good luck today. Paul DeSantis, my team is a mash uni, including Keenan Allen, and I could start Chuba or Freiermuth or pick up Mooney the rest of my bench. First off, in this scenario, Soppe, I don't know about you. I'm leaning towards hoping Keenan Allen can play because the other options are not very appealing. I mean, Chuba Hubbard lost touches last week to, who was it? It was Miles Sanders and I think Mike Boone, if I'm not mistaken. Like, it was not pretty. He only saw, I think 6 carries. And obviously they got blown off the field. But all the other options, I'm not rolling with Freiermuth, even though, Arthur Smith wants to run 12 and 13 personnel and have just tight ends of plenty on the field. Maybe Mooney, but I'd rather try to hold out for Keenan Allen. The good thing with Mooney is that he plays on Monday Night Football, so he is an option that you could hold out for Keenan Allen.
Yeah, it was Boone, and then you throw in a Jonathan Mingo carry last week for good measure there. Oh yeah, who could forget the Jonathan Mingo carry? As far as this, yeah, you're praying that Keenan Allen plays, but from the sounds of this question, he's got to make a tough decision here between Hubbard, Freiermuth, or pick up Mooney. Sounds like you're leaning Mooney on Monday night. I'm going to go Freiermuth. You think Surtain might be locked in on George Pickens. You think Pittsburgh has to score a touchdown this week, in part because most NFL teams score a touchdown, and because I think they can move the ball. What are you looking for from Freiermuth? 5 targets, 3 catches, 27 yards and a touchdown. If he scores, he's the right call here. I think there's some scoring equity because of Surtain on Pickens. Give me Freiermuth here and just hope that the rest of your lineup does a lot of work.
Well, the rest of his lineup, he let us know his bench is all hard. Poor Walker, Adams, and most tough. That is a rough week 1. Paul, good luck today, man. Sorry about the bad luck, but hey, we're here to help fix it. Ashman 10 or Osman 10. My apologies. Jacobs or Ford, Soppe?
I think it's got to be Jacobs here, in part because they don't have any other options. Not that Cleveland's exactly loaded with options, but give me Jacobs. I don't think Indy's going to game script Green Bay out of this thing, and I don't think Green Bay has any other reliable option. So could Jacobs, you know what Jacobs could do? Jacobs could do exactly what Ford did last week. And if that's the case, that might get us there. Marshawn Lloyd being active this week certainly doesn't help my case here, but I don't think he's going to be overly involved. They don't have many options. Ford, you're looking at maybe a big Amari Cooper game.
Okay.
It could take away from the play count. I don't like either one of these guys. Neither's inside my top 20, but I do have Jacobs ranked a touch higher.
So the matchup probably favors Jacobs just because of what we saw Joe Mixon do to this Colts run defense last week. But I think that they're a better unit, and I'm very, very concerned about the efficiency of the entire Packers offense with Malik Willis under center. I'm going to go Ford just because I believe that Jacobs was actually dealing with a back injury earlier this week. I expect him to be fine and everything of that nature. But, Jerome Ford was on the field 72.9% of snaps in week number 1. The touches, the opportunities with maybe similar offensive outlooks in week number 2. I'm going to go with Jerome Ford. It is close. I feel bad you didn't get an answer there, but that's how I see it. And that's how I got it ranked. So, Joe, you two feeling Ford or Najee in a half-point PPR? Soppe, I'm jumping out on this one first. I'm going Najee Harris. 20 carries in week number 1. Jalen Warren isn't right. I think the game script against the Broncos is one that certainly intrigues me until we see something from Bo Nix. So I'm going to go with Najee Harris because Arthur Smith has made it quite clear he wants to run the football early, often, and always in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and Jalen Warren's pretty clearly not healthy. They said he's going to play, but that I forget how exactly Tomlin phrased it, but something along the lines of that it would be irresponsible to call him fully healthy until that changes. I mean, Harris had 20 carries last week. I don't see any reason why that changes. And even if you don't think he's going to be the most efficient guy, either is Ford. So I agree with you. I'm going Harris here. We are a lot out on Ford this week. That is not at all a problem if Ford goes bonkers against the Jags. But we'll see. A lot of anti-Ford takes so far.
Soul Train. Hey, y'all. Do I rely on A.J. Brown and Jahan Dotson on Monday night? If you got, I guess, Dotson on your bench, that makes sense. Or do you flex Jameson Williams, Keenan Allen, or J.K. Dobbins today? Thank you in advance. Soppe, who you got?
Man, talk about a banged-up roster. His healthy guy is J.K. Dobbins. That is not a sentence we've said for the most part over the last 5 seasons. I'm penciling in J.K. Dobbins right now. If we get word that Jameson Williams is active, I could see going that way if you're an underdog and you want to shoot for the moon and stuff. But I know Tate's the J.K. Dobbins guy, so I'll leave the floor to him. But I think even my concerns put him at 10 to 15 touches, and I think that's probably enough to justify playing him here, not knowing what's going to happen with Philly. And I take my chances with J.K. Dobbins over Jahan Dotson, so I'm not getting worried. I'm trying not to words are tough. I'm actively avoiding the Eagles situation here. Give me J.K. Dobbins or any of the other receivers over sitting on the Eagles situation. My goodness.
Soppe, what do we think of the Carolina offense?
No good.
Yeah, it's not good. What do we think the Chargers want to do?
I would say run the ball. That would be Carolina independent.
Yeah. I mean, I get wanting to hold out for A.J. Brown. But I actually think that this Atlanta defense, this Atlanta secondary is pretty good. I mean, they did hold the Steelers offense completely out of the end zone, force them to kick 6 field goals for whatever that's worth. If you want to go ahead and trash Justin Fields and Arthur Smith, that's fine. But I look at that as, this defense is not a bad unit there in Atlanta. So I'm going to go with J.K. Dobbins. He was on the field 59% of the snaps. He had 10 carries, 135 rushing yards. Edwards had 11 and 26. I think the preferred option here and the more efficient option is J.K. Dobbins. So in a matchup where I think the Carolina offense, I'm worried about them being able to even generate points and stay on the football field because of what we saw from that inept unit in week number 1 against the Saints. I am going to roll in what I think is going to be a very favorable game script for J.K. Dobbins. In this scenario. I also like Jameson Williams, but dealing with an ankle injury, I'll go ahead and go with the healthiest option, like you said. Yeah. It's weird. It's Dobbins. Anthony DeBona, 2 of the best around. Hey, thank you very much. Like and subscribe, by the way, if you haven't done so. I hope you both are doing well. I have a streaming defense question. Do I go with the Patriots versus the Seahawks or Washington versus New York? I'm going to say, are there any other options? Maybe if you're forcing me, I'm going Patriots, though.
Yeah, I would agree. And follow Anthony on Twitter. He is our Eagles reporter at PFN. He does a great job for us and keeps everybody updated there. Obviously, a great resource given all the situations going on in Philly these days. I, too, would go New England. You get the Seahawks. I'm betting on the better defense. Like, forget the matchup. I get what you're going with the Commanders playing the Giants, wanting to target Daniel Jones. That's been a pretty good way to go about life over the last couple of years. But New England creates pressure at a higher rate and blitzes at a lower rate. When you have that combination against Geno Smith, who quite frankly is somebody that other people like more than I do, no Kenneth Walker, there's a lot of worries there. I don't think either, like Derek said, is a great option. But I do think the Patriots carry a little bit more of a floor. Give me the Patriots there.
I would love to see, I think the Colts are probably a defense that's not very well owned or very high owned from last week because they got shredded by the Texans. But Malik Willis, when he drops back to pass, bad things generally happen for the offense, which I think that, the Colts defense, I think Latu is going to have himself probably multiple sacks against Malik Willis, the rookie from UCLA. Big week this week. But yeah, I'm with you. Let's go with the Patriots defense. Saw them do some nice things against that Cincinnati offense. No Kenneth Walker today for Seattle. I'm with you there. Good luck today. Yakov Iskowitz can only start 2 of the following 3. Charbonnet, Kirk, McConkey in a full point PPR. Soppe, who you got?
I want to know where you go here. I got Charbonnet and Kirk, but I know McConkey's your guy, and I like him in this matchup, don't get me wrong. But Charbonnet carrying the heavy bell cow workload. And Christian Kirk, say what you will, I thought Trevor Lawrence played fine. He just wasn't given much in the way of opportunity in the second half of that game. Kirk's got the longest streak of a 20-yard catch in a game going. He makes plays. Brian Thomas is going to be great. Evan Ingram is consistent. Kirk is also consistent. I think he's your highest floor of these options. Give me him and Charbonnet, though McConkey's not far behind.
Yeah, no, I'm going to go with Charbonnet for sure, without a doubt. And then I'm also going to go with Ladd McConkey. McConkey led this receiver room in week number 1 and scored, and it looked like the guy that I expected. Now, granted, the game script makes me a little bit nervous because I do think they're just going to be able to run the ball down Carolina's throat. So that doesn't help matters. But Christian Kirk's also going up against a Cleveland secondary that I understand that the overall Cleveland performance was not very good in week number 1. But I still think that they can give opposing receivers some issues. So and Kirk also had a bad drop in week number 1 against the Dolphins. So I'm going to stay away from Kirk. I like what I saw from McConkey. Charbonnet is going to be the guy there. He's going to be force fed, all kinds of touches. So I'm going Charbonnet and McConkey. Good luck today. Levitate GG's. Demarcus Robinson. I knew we were going to get some Rams receivers questions. Or Brian Thomas Jr. Soppe, who you got?
I mean, are we sure DeMarcus Robinson's the Puka Nacua fill-in? We're not. Brian Thomas, we know his role on an offense with a quarterback I trust just as much, if not more, than Matthew Stafford. Give me Brian Thomas and the one-play upside here. We saw him heavily involved in that first half. Scores with the nice toe-tap touchdown in the back of the end zone. Nice communication play, all that good stuff. He checked every single box I wanted to, or wanted him to in his NFL debut, except the offense just ran out of gas in the second half. I don't think that's going to be something that sustains. Brian Thomas was a love guy for me in the preseason. I loved him in week 1. I'm going back to the well in week 2, and I don't think I'm getting off of that wagon anytime soon. Brian Thomas over Demarcus Robinson, even if we knew Robinson was a Nacua fill-in.
I am going to go with Brian Thomas Jr. Just I love the upside, and the Cleveland Browns defense, it likes to run a lot of man coverage, or at least that's what they did in week number 1, and they ran a lot of cover 3 as well, single high safety looks. So if you're going to ask these corners to operate on an island, which I think that they will, and they're great, I understand that, but Brian Thomas Jr. just needs 1 or 2 big plays down the field to pay off, even against a secondary as talented as Cleveland. So I'm going to go with Thomas and his ceiling. I understand if you want to go with a floor, maybe Demarcus Robinson being on the football field as much as he was and maybe an expanded role. I understand the path for Robinson, but I'm going to go with Brian Thomas Jr. Just think there's too much talent there. I think he gets a big play against this Cleveland secondary in week 2. Good luck today. Start 2.5 point PPR from Joseph. Went 0 running back, so deciding between good receivers, Nico Collins, Neighbors, and Marvin Harrison Jr., Rashee Rice, and Amon-Ra already starting for him, which I agree with. So, Soppe, who do you got of these other 3 options?
We will come right back to that, but Josh Downs and A.J. Brown have officially been ruled out for week 2. So the Brown decision becomes a lot easier. Didn't think we were going to get that news this far ahead of time, but that is glorious. So some people in Philadelphia really looking out for fantasy managers. You're not starting John Dotson anymore. That conversation can be completely left off the board. There's no secondary receiver that I want in that offense. Be free. Open up your roster. Open up the waiver wire. Do whatever you need to. But now that you've added Darnell Mooney or Jahan Dotson or whatever, you don't need to play them. So that's the good news. Josh Downs being out, not a surprise, nor really an impactful kind of thing here. Just wanted to circle back to that. As far as Joseph goes, I'm betting on quarterback play. Look at his team. He's got Rashee Rice. He's got Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's got Nico Collins. I'm locking in Nico Collins. So he's got a lot of stability there. There's a lot of high floor kind of guys there. There's not much room for failure. So I'm going to keep going with that, and I'm going to bet on the better quarterback in Marvin Harrison Jr. Neighbors is great. I have Neighbors and Harrison ranked in the same vicinity. There's no doubt about that. I'm more confident in what Harrison can bring to the table this week than Neighbors, but I don't think there's a wrong answer here. The more I talk myself through it, I'm like, oh yeah, like the target count's probably higher for Neighbors, but the target equity is a little bit lower. The completion, you could very much, they're in the same tier. Personally, I go with Marvin Harrison Jr. along with Nico Rice and St. Brown, but my goodness, this is a hell of a roster.
Yeah, Joseph stacked here. Another bit of news: Evan Ingram's out for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So maybe another reason to like Brian Thomas Jr. or some of the, maybe even Christian Kirk today. Probably an uptick in targets. But when it comes to this, Soppe, Nico Collins has a matchup against Jalen Johnson. And I think Jalen Johnson is in the conversation for the best cornerback in the NFL. Tyreek Stevenson, who starts opposite of Jalen Johnson, is also no scrub. You saw him on the pick 6 from Will Levis where he goes, oh, my God, what did I do? And then even in the slot, Gordon is also a pretty darn good nickel defender. They got a secondary, which Quan Brisker and Kevin Byard on the back end. Like this Chicago secondary is pretty talented, and they look pretty darn good in week number 1. So I'm actually gonna fade Collins a little bit behind Neighbors. The matchup speaks to it, Soppe. Okay. I know, I get it. Nico Collins is great, but I think this is a tougher matchup than people realize for Nico Collins. And it doesn't get any better for Malik Neighbors matchup-wise than the Washington secondary. Yes, Daniel Jones sucks. I get it. But you just need one big play, and I'm going to go with Neighbors. I'm doubling down. I know. Collins is probably safer because of the quarterback play. But I'm playing to win. Let's go. Okay. Neighbors for me. Bipolar Garage, hit the like button. Hey, man, appreciate you. Jacksonville or Indy for defense. I already mentioned my love for the Indianapolis Colts this week against Malik Willis. So I'm going Indy. Soppe, do you see it the same way?
Colts are a good defense, but they're the wrong answer to this question. I don't think Green Bay puts the ball in harm's way enough here. What are they going to do? In a perfect world, they don't believe in Malik Willis. They're going to run the ball 30 times if they can. And if not, they're going to run it some more. So that's how I kind of see that going. Indy could hold them to a low point total, but I don't see a lot of fumbles. I don't see a lot of sacks or interceptions or things like that because I don't see a lot of attempts through Green Bay. Jacksonville plays Cleveland, who is hell-bent on wishing Deshaun Watson happy birthdays and having him trot out there for $250 million and see what he can do. that's dangerous to me. Jacksonville showed pretty well on defense last week against Miami. If they can put pressure on Watson, I just think there's more upside. And I don't think they give up a ton of points here. It's not like I see Cleveland hanging 30 on them and getting you negative points from a fantasy perspective. So I'm going to go Jacksonville, understanding that the range of outcomes is probably a little bit higher, but that's how I play defense. I want the teams with a higher ceiling. In the above question, I went with the safe receiver. I'm the complete opposite when it comes to defense and kicker.
So I understand the path for both, right? So I think that the Indianapolis offense is going to have enough success to force Green Bay out of running the ball, like you said, 30 plus times, 35, something crazy. But if they are able to bleed the clock and run the ball and it's a low scoring affair, then maybe Jacksonville is the play. I'll just roll with Jacksonville so we don't go divided on this one. I'll go with Jacksonville because we just didn't see anything from Deshaun Watson in week number 1 to feel encouraged about. So I'm okay with that. Good luck today. Golden Monkey 1468. Need 2 running backs, running back, wide receiver out if with Dobbins, Charbonnet, Pacheco, Rice, Flowers, PPR league. Soppe, who you got?
I think Pacheco's an auto start in this question. So it's Charbonnet or Dobbins for your RB2 spot, and then Rice or Flowers for the flex, because I think we both have, or I don't want to speak for you, but likely have both of those receivers over the secondary running back. So I'm going to go with both Chiefs. We got Pacheco and Rice. I'm going to go Dobbins over Charbonnet. That's how I have it ranked. I don't love it. They're back-to-back. It's really tight for me. I think Charbonnet touches the ball more, which is where I kind of usually lean with these kind of things. But Dobbins' touch quality, Derek, you've mentioned it, should be high. I'm going to go Dobbins in a close one over Charbonnet for running back 2 and Rice over Flowers for your flex.
Yeah, I'm going... We're in lockstep here. It is close. A lot of good options. I actually don't hate any of these options. So you got a good problem, Golden Monkey. But I am going to go with the 2 Chiefs against the Bengals and Dobbins because of that matchup against the Carolina defense that just lost Derek Brown for the year too. I mean, it's just a rough go for Carolina so far. Good luck today. PJ, Tony Pollard, or David Montgomery, Soppe, a spicy one.
I think you got to lean Montgomery here. The touchdown equity alone kind of gives him this edge here. In a different matchup, I don't mind this. David Montgomery obviously facing Tampa Bay, which isn't great for his skill set in the least. So I was receptive to going Tony Pollard earlier in the week, but it's not like he gets a favorable opponent here either. Here he gets the Jets, a slow-moving offense. That's going to be a low-possession game. At the very least, I'm confident there's going to be a lot more plays run in Detroit, Tampa Bay than I am New York and Tennessee. So give me Montgomery for the scoring upside and the play potential.
I'm very intrigued by Tony Pollard because I was pleasantly surprised with how efficient he was against a Chicago defense last year, Soppe, that finished number 1 against opposing rushing attacks with the lowest rush yards allowed in the league last year. And Pollard went for 82 yards on 16 carries, average of 5.1 yards per carry, and a score against the Chicago defense in week 1. So, I mean, very, very, very encouraging. I do expect it to be a high-scoring game, though, against the Bucs and the Lions. Do I think that Montgomery is going to run wild on this Bucs defense? No, but we just need him to fall into the end zone once, and he could probably do it twice if they generate a lot of scoring opportunities against a banged-up secondary for the Buccaneers. I will go with Montgomery as well, but it's very close. Good luck today. Levitate. We got another one. Colby Parkinson or Dalton Schultz? Soppe, who you got?
He's got 2 questions in here, so I'm going to fade both Texans all in one answer here. I'm going to go Colby Parkinson over Dalton Schultz at the tight end position. You're not getting a ton of production either way here. Schultz pretty clearly number 4 in this passing game, number 5 if you include Joe Mixon's role, and they clearly want to run the ball. So that's prohibitive against a good defense, in my opinion there. Not that Colby Parkinson is foolproof. He's not by any means, but I'm going to go that direction. And then I'm going to go Xavier Worthy over Tank Dell. I know I'm skipping ahead to his other question here, but we are nothing if not efficient here in the PFN channel. So I'm going to go Worthy over Dell. I mentioned the Bears defense that's locking up and feeling good. And you're looking at Dell. He's the third option with CJ Stroud in a tough matchup, or you can get Xavier Worthy, who theoretically is the third option in a Patrick Mahomes-led offense in a better matchup. To me, the math's out there. Give me Worthy over Dell in a battle of upside guys.
The target share is the only thing that makes me want to lean Dell here, but
I get that.
The matchup is a little bit tricky for Houston in this one, so I will go with Xavier Worthy. It's close though, and then Colby Parkinson. No tight end ran more routes than Colby Parkinson in week number 1 which means at least he's going to be on the field. Matthew Stafford, who I think ranked 24th in air yards per passing attempt in week number 1.
It's low.
So that offensive line is banged up. I expect them to be, taking the quick passing game right around the line of scrimmage, which is why you would want to start Parkinson in the first place. At least he's going to be on the football field, so he could be a viable option if you get some of those, quick check down Charlie type of looks from Matthew Stafford in week number 2. Good luck today. Sanjo Raider, we got another Tank Dell question. Dell or Pittman, Soppe, who you got?
Man, I'm going to come across as a Tank Dell hater all season if these are the type of questions we're getting. It's Michael Pittman for me. In an offensive environment where we think they can score, we think they're going to be playing with a lead, where we think that's going to happen in Houston, but we're not sure. But Pittman, the number 1 option for an offense we trust, and he saw 8 targets last week. I understand that it didn't net anything. 31 yards is nothing. But I'm going to trust the process here. His skill set doesn't line up great with Richardson, but with Josh Downs again out with this ankle sprain, that underneath route is completely his to own. I'm going Pittman here in PPR, non-PPR, whatever, however you slice it up. Give me Pittman over Tank.
I do think that the secondary can be had. We saw it a little bit last week against the Philadelphia Eagles. They're in Green Bay. So I just don't know how much they're going to have to throw the ball in this one, which makes me a little bit nervous. In particular, if he wants to air it out, it looks like Alec Pierce and Adonai Mitchell are kind of the preferred options vertically in this offense. I'm going to go with Pittman. I don't love it, though. I could be talked into it with Dell, but I'm going to go with Pittman. I'm going to just expect that they're going to take more shots underneath and utilize Pittman's skill set in this offense just a little bit more. Good luck today. Golden Monkey doing God's work out here, letting us know that Evan Ingram is injured in warm-ups. Oh, goodness. And then A.J. Brown being out. We already kind of talked about it. Navarro also mentioning it up as well. Appreciate you guys helping us out here on the live stream. Appreciate you. So with Ingram now out and inactive, would you play Brian Thomas Jr. over Jameson Williams?
I moved BTJ up 7 spots in my rankings. The only problem there is Jameson Williams was ranked 9 spots higher. So I still have Jameson Williams 2 spots higher than BTJ in my rankings. I understand if you want to fade the health issue to a speed demon, like I understand where you're going there. The game environment is just too much for me to overlook when making this specific decision. Jameson Williams, I personally think it's an Amon-Ra St. Brown game where he posts, I don't want to say a Cooper Kupp stat line, but where he goes something like 10 catches on 13 targets for $120. And if he does that, it takes away from what Jameson Williams is doing, but I'm still going Williams. It's still a pass funnel Bucks defense. Williams over Thomas, but it's awfully close now with Ingram out.
Banged up secondary. The Buccaneers secondary, comparing them to the Browns secondary, it's night and day. So when you have another explosive option who had a great week 1 debut in Jameson Williams, and he's got a plus level matchup, should be a high scoring contest. There's just too many things in favor of Jameson Williams for me to take the risk on Brian Thomas Jr. when it's unnecessary. Good luck today. Levitate, Marvin Harrison or Xavier Worthy? I can't believe we're asking ourselves this question, but it's a legitimate one. Who do you got?
It's very legitimate. I'm still going to side with Marvin Harrison Jr. I think he's the better talent. I mean, he was drafted that way, and so I'm not exactly breaking news there, but the environment, I think, is going to be a little more friendly there. We think that's going to be a coin toss game. It's a point spread. It's been kind of going back and forth all week as to who's favored in that game, where Kansas City's been pretty heavily favored throughout. Pacheco, I'm looking for maybe 20 carries and $115 from him. This could be a big Pacheco game, a big time of possession game from them. If Cincinnati can't move the ball, we haven't really seen proof of concept from them. T. Higgins out again. I don't think Cincinnati puts up a great fight, and if they don't, Worthy's low target earning from week 1 is going to rear its head again in a low volume game. Give me Harrison for a bounce back spot, even though Kyler Murray says it's not his job to get him the ball, even though it by definition is.
I feel like Worthy is going to be one of our biggest problems all season long.
Agreed.
Because I don't want to tell you to sit Worthy and then watch him go for 127 on 2 receptions and 2 scores, including running 1 in or something crazy like that. It is Marvin Harrison Jr. Don't panic. I understand he was running like his feet were stuck in molasses, going like clocked out at like 16 miles an hour, his top speed on the football field in week 1, which was slower than Keenan Allen. Come on. Like, I expect the market to autocorrect a little bit on Marvin Harrison Jr. I do think that they should make it a point to try to get him a couple touches early in this contest. I'm still going to go with the dynamic talent in Marvin Harrison Jr. Good luck today. AJ, Tank Dell or Jameson Williams?
Give me J-Mo here. I'm going to keep fading Tank Dell. I mean, it's not really a fade on him as much as it is. I'm confident Jameson Williams and the situation that presents itself there. Tank Dell, I think, is going to be a lot like Xavier Worthy when it comes to variance and things like that, but you have a size component to worry about, and you have if they're going to go run heavy. I mean, everything coming out of Houston seems to point towards Slowick loving Joe Mixon, and if that's the case early on here, what are we doing? I mean, Stephon Diggs looked like the short option, 9 air yards last week, even though he scored twice. And Nico Collins is moving downfield and in between. I don't see where Tank Dell has a target upside that reaches that of Jameson Williams.
Again, it's more so the argument this week matchup based. I think that Chicago secondary is pretty darn good, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are banged up on the back end, big time. And they also have an issue getting after the quarterback, Soppe, which means if you want to take shots down the football field, I think the Lions are going to be able to hold up against that Buccaneers unit up front. No Kalijah Cansey, I think, in week number 2. So, I mean, there's just a lot of things that tell me Jameson Williams has a really nice upside. I'm going to go JMO over Tank Dell. Good luck today. Joseph, start 2 on the flex, another running back team. Neighbors, MHJ, Brian Thomas, and Drake London. Again, with the starters being Rashee Rice and Amon-Ra, and he promises it's a different league. I don't know. I'm skeptical, but who do you got?
He's kind of loaded. Maybe he's good at this, and we should be the ones asking him questions on stream. So, Joseph, good on you for going that direction. I'm going to go with the first 2 you named here, Neighbors and MHJ. Go with the rookies. Drake London, I need to see it from Kirk Cousins. If he's really as limited physically as we think, that's a problem. That's a big-time problem. Neighbors in as good a spot you could possibly ask for, and I've already went through the Harrison case for why I think he can bounce back in a significant way here. Brian Thomas, stock up because of Evan Ingram being out, but not quite on the range of these 3 yet.
So I am going to go with Neighbors, but I'm thinking maybe Drake London just got the Joey Porter Jr. effect there in Pittsburgh last week.
Yeah.
He's a good young corner, and I thought that he had a really nice game when he was matched up against Drake London. I don't think you have that problem this week for the Atlanta offense, in particular with Drake London going up against that Philadelphia secondary that just got tuned up by Jaden Reed in a big way in week number 1. So I'm going to go London and Neighbors. I want to see it from MHJ, and then Brian Thomas Jr., great player. I love his long-term outlook, but again, why mess with the Cleveland secondary when you don't have to? Good luck today. Cameron, Dobbins, Charbonnet, or Ford? I feel like we got a similar question. I'm going with Dobbins. Sabe, who you got?
I'm going Dobbins. I got it ranked in the exact order he presented it, so Cameron obviously knows something when he's asking questions. Good work.
Joseph has a question. What are your week 2 bold predictions, Soppe? I'm going to go with Baker Mayfield finishing as a top 5 fantasy quarterback for a second straight week. The Detroit Lions, I think, are going to have a lot of success putting a lot of points on this Buccaneers defense that's really banged up, particularly on the back end. And Baker Mayfield's going to have to try to keep pace there in Detroit. Lions tend to score a lot of points at Ford Field, and when they have a plus level matchup where I think that they're going to have a lot of success through the air. Baker Mayfield last year in that playoff game against the Detroit Lions threw for over 300 yards and 2 scores, and they added Jalen McMillan. So I'm going with Baker Mayfield doubling down as a top 5 fantasy producer at the quarterback position in week number 2.
We'll see that in our DFS matchup, and we'll circle back to that next week to see if that pays off for you. I'm going to stay in the NFC North. You got an NFC North opponent there. I'm going to go the other side of the NFC North with the Chicago Bears and say Caleb Williams not doubles but triples his week 1 production under the bright lights here against the Texans. He gets going up and down against CJ Stroud. I think we get a fun one tonight. Give me something like 31-30. It's going to be fun. We're going to get one of those receivers for Chicago to be healthy next to DJ Moore. Caleb Williams over 270.
So we got Jay coming in with a couple more questions. Y'all, we are about to go ahead and sign off. If you have any more start-sit questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments. But if you have not yet done so, subscribe. We really appreciate y'all joining us for this entire episode. The 9 of you that are still here, appreciate you. But Jay, Lawrence, Herbert, or Cousins, he's got to drop one. All 3 feel like very quality quarterbacks that are coming off of so-so fantasy performances in week 1. Who do you not believe in for the rest of the season of these options?
Yeah, the better question is why do you have 3 quarterbacks on your roster? But we'll address that at another time. Herbert's the odd man out here. I just think they have the least motivation to throw the ball, whereas Lawrence, they got to pass the ball. And Kirk Cousins, they brought him in for a reason, and it wasn't to hand the ball to Bijan. Not that he can't do that. It's to amplify Drake and Pitts.
I'm going to say Kirk Cousins. Soppe, of all these teams, there was one organization that drafted a quarterback in the first round in the top 10.
Yeah.
And Kirk Cousins did not look good. I mean, objectively, I know he's maybe rusty, and that Pittsburgh defense is probably better than a lot of folks thought. But if this continues from Cousins, those chirps to see Michael Penix Jr. are going to get louder and louder. And Herbert, for what you will, with all the losses out on the perimeter with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and Austin Eckler out of the backfield, they still played winning football. Do we think that maybe this offense, starts to hit a couple more deep shots down the football field with a talent like Herbert and the offensive line? Joe Alt, what a debut against Max Crosby. I think better days are ahead for this passing attack. So I'm going to keep Lawrence and Herbert, and I'm going to drop Cousins. Surprising, but that's the way I see it. Jay also asking, Neighbors or Flowers this week?
I'm going Flowers there. I think he's a top 15 guy. I don't think that's going to be the last time we say that. A lot of good things in store for Flowers. Give me him over Neighbors this week.
I'm doubling down with Neighbors. I think they're both great plays this week. That matchup against the Washington secondary, they looked rough, Soppe. They showed no signs of improvement from last year against the Buccaneers. Mayfield was outstanding, going 289 and 4 scores. Of course, what cures an ailing secondary? Probably playing Daniel Jones, but you still got to deal with Malik Neighbors. I'm going to go Neighbors, but it's very, very close. I have both as top 15 options this week. Jay, Reed or Bowers in the flex? We got a Brock Bowers question. Who do you got, Soppe?
I'm still going Reed. I think they can manufacture things for him in a significant way. He's still the featured option there. It's closer than I would have ever thought in week 2, but Reed for me.
I'm going Brock Bowers. Led the team in receptions. Soppe outsnapped Michael Mayer. Only saw one fewer snap as an inline tight end, graded out as a higher, more efficient run blocker than Michael Mayer. And this was all week 1 with Brock Bowers dealing with a foot injury heading into the game. Like the week 1 usage, so encouraging for Brock Bowers. Give me Bowers. I just don't trust Malik Willis. Jaden Reed's great. I just don't trust Malik Willis under center. Good luck today. Real quick, we're going to hit these rapid fire, Soppe. BTJ or Metcalf, half point PPR?
It's close, but Metcalf for me, more scoring equity.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Metcalf. Similar matchups that aren't very intriguing, but I am going to go with Metcalf in week number 2. Good luck today. In a super flex league, that's why Jay had the 3 quarterback options. So yeah, I'm still dropping Cousins. Soppe's got Herbert. Buckeye, Tyler Johnson or Alec Pierce?
Pierce for me, deep down the field, beats Green Bay.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Pierce. Pierce, I loved what I saw, and with Josh Downs out, I still think Alex Pierce is going to be on the field 80% of the snaps this week. So good luck today. And then Joe with the final question: which tight end would you pick up for Evan Ingram's injury? I'm going to say Colby Parkinson, probably one of the few guys that's on the waiver wire at this point. On the field early, often always running a ton of routes in an offense that I think is going to struggle to run the football, and they're going to lean on Matthew Stafford in the quick passing game. I think Parkinson has a role and an opportunity to ho-humming his way to about 12 fantasy points in a full PPR format.
He's a percentage play. I'll go a little off the board here with my DFS lineup. Mike Gesicki gets into the end zone in a pass-first script for the Bengals without T. Higgins against the Chiefs. Give me Mike Gesicki. Won't be fun, won't be exciting, but something like 3 catches for 30 yards and a score. I'll take it.
Love it, guys and gals. Appreciate y'all joining us here for this week 2 live stream. Starts it here on the Pro Football Network YouTube channel. If you have not yet done so, like, subscribe, click the bell so you get notified every single time we drop a new bit of video content here on the channel. If you have not yet done so too, check us out over on X at Derek Tate NFL and Kyle Soppe PFN. For Kyle Soppe, I'm Derek Tate, and good luck, everybody. Until next time, later, says the Tater.